Hi, this is Nicole Rivera, and you're listening to the Stop Writing Alone podcast. We are continuing the Happy Campers interview series. This week, I am talking with Tammy Breitweiser, who the name might sound familiar. I interviewed Tammy back on episode 64. She's the accidental inspirationalist to me always because she is inspiring us every step of the way, whether she means to or not. But she's now going to be talking to us about all things writing community, her experience in the Happy Campers Club, as well as the writing communities that she leads on her own, and all of the other writing communities that she's tapping into, where she's learning, where she's growing, how she's writing. There's so much in here, as there always is with Tammy Breitweiser. Make sure you check out the show notes after the show or while you're listening to get all of her links so that you can follow along her journey and maybe join her in her push group. Or I've done her Fabulous Flash Fiction course, which is amazing. She's got a new thing coming in the new year, but I'm going to let her tell you all about it. So here we go. Tammy Breitweiser, teacher, writer, coach, community leader, all the things you want to hear. Definitely a woman who's going to help you stop writing alone. So, yeah, I'm just going to let her take it away from here. Enjoy. Here we are. It's Tammy Breitweiser again. If you did not hear the first episode that Tammy and I spoke, goodness, Tammy, was that
a year ago?
A year ago. I will have that link in the show notes so that you can go through our whole first exchange. And that was when Tammy was in the depths of her 100 Rejections project, which was so inspiring to me. But Tammy is also a member of the Stop Writing Alone Happy Campers community. So I wanted to reach out to her again to not only update us on where she's at, but also let's talk a bit about the experience of being in writing community. So Tammy, to get started, let people know, what are you writing right now? What are you working on in this moment?
So right now I'm really focused on short stories. I'm working on pulling a collection together that are fairy tale inspired. But I'm sort of taking Amy Bender's advice and just writing kind of what I feel like every day and seeing how that piece together. We just came off the tails of, well, today is the last day. In real time, it's September 30th, right, of Story a Day. And yes. So they're the same prompts in September as they are in May. So
I didn't realize that. Is that every year? And I haven't realized.
Yeah, it is every year. And so it actually worked out really well because I've really been avoiding revision. I really need to find a revision rhythm that works. I was really happy with the stories that I produced in May. So I let them sit all this time. And then what I did was I went back into those stories and revised them
on their day. Yeah.
So that worked out really well. I actually did get a submission out a couple weeks ago, and I have 2 more stories that are out with a critique partner right now. So I'm getting back into the swing of these submissions. I've taken a little bit of a break from that and just focused on the writing.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I mean, yeah, getting a rhythm of revisions, I think, is something that every writer sort of has to get to that point. First of all, recognizing that you need it. And then secondly, figuring out what works for you. Those NYC Midnight contests that I've been doing have been really putting me into a groove, at least with my short stories, of like, I can see what is working for me on this level. I'm struggling though with how to translate it to the longer form. I mean, what I do, and I think we've discussed this before, is I write the story on paper, hand, and then I rewrite it again and again. And I just keep rewriting it. It's bananas. But every single time I come to a new blank page, I'm thinking about where it was. What do I really want it to say? What do I need to tweak about? And it's been working, but it's, first of all, painful to my poor hand, and very, I don't want to say it's time consuming, because those deadlines are so short that I'm just sort of forcing myself to sit there and do it. But to think of doing something like that for a longer form would be, it can't be done. So I'm also on the quest for a revision rhythm for longer things.
I am a big proponent of the rewriting. But what I do is I write it out by hand and then I transcribe it into the computer, which automatically like puts me in a different part of the brain. And then reading out loud has become an important piece.
Huge.
But if I feel like the story really isn't like that works if there's a clear beginning, middle, and end, and I feel like I'm getting somewhere with the story, like it just needs to be tweaked.
Yes.
If there's a larger problem with the story, what I've been doing is reading through and highlighting or underlining like the sparkly bits, the pieces that really jump out to me, and then I rewrite from there. So I sort of have like two different revision pieces.
Of course. Yeah, that's great. I remember talking about the sparkly bits in the flash fiction, fabulous flash fiction course that you did, which was fabulous. And I know you don't have one going on right now, but I just want to tell listeners to keep an eye open in case that ever opens up again, because it was really amazing. I think that's part of what helped me with my shorter fiction as well, just showing up and the conversations that we had within the group. I was so upset when I signed up for the second round, and then my entire family got sick that week, and I'm like, I can't even function.
Yeah, the second round came out much different, just because like everybody's world sort of like all the bubbles
back to school time for a lot of people, right? August is not for us in New York, but I know a lot of people were getting into like new schedules and rhythms and things like that. I can imagine. Yeah. Yes. I think I missed everything. No, I made it to the meeting. Did I make it to the meeting on that one?
You did. Yeah.
And that was the end.
Yeah. And that's what makes that class kind of uniquely mine. So we started out with a Zoom call because I feel if you're reading other people's writing in a smaller group setting and you're sort of in this like intimate, concentrated space, that we get much more ground if we get to have that conversation ahead of time. I really have enjoyed that. We do a little writing together and then we jump into, the daily prompts. And then, of course, some people wrote daily with the prompts and some people sort of saved the prompts and wrote to them later. But then there was opportunity for some feedback and sharing, because sometimes just that deadline of, okay, someone's going to read this.
Everything.
Definitely had people and you had the orange pen. So we had like specific pens for the fabulous flash fiction.
I was so weirdly inspired by the orange pen that week.
We all were.
The pen is back, everyone. The pen is back. So fabulous flash fiction is a thing that happens from time to time, but on a consistent basis, you are leading what you're calling the push group for writers. Can you just give everybody an idea of, first of all, what is it? Where can they get into it? Let us know about push.
All right. So push group started because at the beginning of the year, I always pick one word for the year. And it was push because I wanted to push myself out of my comfort zone. And I was really looking for a certain feeling of community that was consistent. And so I did these trial sort of, meetings in January, and they were so popular. And my intention was really only kind of push myself out of the comfort zone for January. And then everybody was like, well, we're meeting next week, right? And it was like February. So each meeting always has a topic, and sometimes it's more just about writing process or what people are working on. But then we've been doing some specific things. So 1 month we did how to go from unpublished to published. And so I went through my process of how I had done that based on the 100 Rejections project that we talked about in the last podcast, which actually ended up turning into the 100 Submissions project, thanks to you, because you were the only person that thought to ask me, well, why rejections and not submissions? And I'm like, that is a very good question. And I did end up changing it because the whole point of that project was to change my attitude towards rejection.
Yes.
And it worked faster than I thought. So, so the push groups, like we've done some work with Natalie Goldberg's book, Writing Down the Bones, which I know you had done with Happy Campers as well.
Yes.
And then right now we're actually in the middle of The Artist's Way Light. What we're doing is we're a lot of people are very interested in the Artist Way, but it's a 12-week commitment and there's a lot in that book. So we're doing every push meeting we have wins, and then we do a writing activity together. And then we have a topic that we talk about that they know ahead of time so that, people can think about it. So right now we're going through chapter by chapter, and we're just looking at the big ideas of the Artist Way and having a conversation centering around that. They're 1 hour meetings once a week. And all the information for that is through my Instagram. All my new offerings with the fabulous Flash Fiction class. I'm working on a tarot class that I'm going to be doing probably after the first of the year. And push groups are always open. It's $15 a month, and then the resources and all that. And every time we do a push group meeting, somebody recommends something on Amazon, and there's a link that shows up in the chat. So fair warning.
This is what happens in writing community. I feel bad mentioning any resource at all, because not only do links end up in chats, you'll hear people going, I got it, I'm ordering. I'm like, what? I don't want, I'm sorry. Just showing you something for a second.
The latest item was our friend Heather Huffman had told me that Natalie Goldberg was coming out with these writing down the bones cards. It's all, exactly. And then everyone in the whole group joined.
I got them.
So in addition to, I love Slack, which thank you for tagging me on the giveaway. When you become part of the push group, then you are added to the Slack. And so we share submission things. We talk about writing. If people are having problems with anything, they kind of crowdsource it. So it's another great way to talk. But as with all communities, it kind of goes up and down depending on where people are in life and the topic at hand. So yeah, but it's been super fun. It really has become like the heartbeat of everything that I do. Yeah. And it's just as fueling for me as it is for everyone else. It's a beautiful.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask you really from the top, when you said that it was inspired by you wanting to push yourself outside of your own comfort zone. Was that in terms of your writing or in terms of being a writing community leader? Like, what was the thing that you were pushing at that point?
I think I don't remember the actual original idea. It's one of those things like the idea, and it's kind of morphed into its own thing now. Yeah. But I do think that it was about me being a writing leader facilitator. I've tried a couple different ways to lead community, and I couldn't quite find the right fit for me and the people that enjoy my content. Yes. And I tried Patreon, which is a beautiful platform, but it wasn't able to hold the things that I wanted to hold for the space. And part of my particular superpower or magic is I'm really good at facilitating those live meetings. Yeah. I try to make it an environment where everybody feels like they have a voice and everybody feels comfortable to share. And having a teaching background and facilitator for professional development helps, because there are ways you can kind of massage that so that, people feel like they can be heard. And so I found out that was the most popular things was when I had live meetings, which is why I added the live meeting before even the Flash Fiction class. Yeah. I think that's such an important point, because one of the things that I'm always trying to do at Stop Writing Alone, this is to encourage people that if you're not finding the writing community you want, go ahead and create it. But that idea that sometimes even that process requires revision, learning yourself, what is your, your leadership style. And then exactly like you said, I mean, you and I speak all the same languages when it comes to this because of our teaching and coaching backgrounds. Like, we get it, that it's not just about the leader, but it's also about the community. You have to feed, you have your people, whoever the people that sort of hear your message. And then that question is, how do they like to hear that message? If I'm showing up writing a blog every day, is that going to connect with the people that really love to hear what I have to say? Or do I need to be in the Zoom call with them as we're having the conversation?
there are so many different models out there. What are some of the things that you said the Patreon you tried and it wasn't like the great model, which I hear from many writers, period. And that's, one of the newer sort of experiments is Substack for writers, because it has a little bit more of a writing platform. But did you try any other type of community leading model before sort of realizing, yep, Zoom, it's working?
Well, I've had the blog for quite a while, which kind of goes through its own thing, and that's still there. I do have little pockets of communities like teacher writers that I'm involved with, and other groups. Like I don't always, but I'm involved in like the 5-Minute Friday. So certain groups in the blogging community post on certain days, and then you have link ups. So that's part of that, which I am still a part of, but it's not, but that used to be the main thing. Yeah. Twitter I tried, but that didn't get the conversation rolling like I wanted it to. I did try Medium, especially before I did the Rejections project. Yeah. Medium was there, but Medium, and I haven't been on Medium because it wasn't there. The one thing I was going to say too is that all of these different things, these platforms, these ways of bringing community together require different amounts of energy. Yes. And I've been really honing in on what fuels me and what depletes me. And it doesn't matter what I think should fuel me or deplete me.
The facts are the facts.
Right. And it's kind of like writing too. Like we have this idea of the things that we want to write. And it's not just a talent and a gap like the Ira Glass thing. Yes. But it's also about, what you find life giving. Like Patreon became overwhelming to me. It wasn't giving me the results that I need. I couldn't get the conversation. Medium wasn't giving me the conversation. Yeah. The blog was, but the people who were really interacting with me weren't there. I tried to do Slack on its own just to have that community. And I found out that because I needed something outside of it to kind of still keep that conversation going. Right. So
that makes sense. That makes sense for the platform of Slack. Yeah.
And the push group sort of came to be because last fall, what I had done in Patreon is I had done workshops, because workshops is something that I've done in teaching and then started to do in writing once I gave myself permission that was okay for me to do it. That's a whole other conversation. But and I tried to do like recorded things so that people could do it on their own time. Yes. But that didn't work because there's something missing with the energy. Also, my style too is that I'm in it with everyone else. Like when I'm doing the writing in the push groups, like I'm writing with everyone else. Now I don't always share because I'm the facilitator, and as a leader, like I'm still trying to figure out where that is, but it's always evolving. But the big thing is, okay, is this worth my energy? And am I getting fueled from it, or is it exhausting? And we had talked about, even before we started recording, like everybody has their own different thing. Like you love the daily schedule with Happy Campers. Yes. And I like the weekly schedule and the 30-day challenges and the 100-day challenges. So we all have our own little way
to show up. Yeah. I think that's really key, is that understanding there's no right or wrong answer globally for that, but there is a right answer for you, and none of us knew it out the gate. I also tried many different things, and this has been the thing that has been singing to me, and like you're saying, not only serving the people that I'm showing up for, but also serving me and feeding my energy so that I can continue to show up in a way that I feel is valuable to everybody. So yeah, speaking of your love of 100-day challenges, you just recently posted in your newsletter, which we can also find the newsletter in the Instagram bio, right?
Yes.
That we're near the end of the year, just under the 100 days. So of course, Tammy Breitweiser knew that was happening and gave herself one last 100-day challenge. And I love it. I love it because we talk about this all the time. tell everybody what you're doing. And I do have a couple of questions about what you're doing. So what is your last 100-day challenge, Tammy?
So so my last 100 days challenge is the 100-day MFA.
Yeah, it is.
I have been struggling with the MFA question since Nicole, you and I met in the Artist Way group with Sam Kimberly.
Right.
And it was through one of the exercises where the idea of an MFA really is appealing to me. And you and I, again, speak each other's language. Like, we are both teachers. And so in our generation and the way that we believe learning and growth to be, when you want to be professional at something, you get a degree in that thing. That's right. Or you do an internship. And so I've really been, and last year I did apply for several fully funded MFAs. I wasn't sure quite how I was going to swing that, but I figured with COVID and
I was just going to ask, was it a virtual thing or was it? Yeah.
And so, but there are issues with that. Like, and you have a fabulous podcast about where you discuss your personal feelings about the MFA as well. My biggest thing actually centers around the community. I can give myself reading and writing assignments. I have done it since I was in high school, but I can't always control the community. And in an MFA, you don't get to choose the cohort that you're in. You only, and even if you apply for an MFA and you choose the teachers based on the faculty at the time of application, by the time you go, sometimes those people are on sabbatical or it changes. And so I started thinking about this, and I'm a really big fan of DIY MFA from Gabriela Pereira.
Same. Yeah.
But her approach and style doesn't quite fit. She is wonderful, and she's beautiful, but it doesn't, all of the components of her pieces don't work for me. I do love 100-day challenge. So I thought, okay, I do all of these things. And some of it feels very normal to me because this is just how I am. I'm a manifesting generator in human design, and I'm constantly looking for the next right thing for me.
Right.
And I learned that, and then like, okay, where's the next right thing? Because I've learned that now I need to move on, or I change lanes.
Yes.
So I've decided that I'm going to track for the last 100 days, all of the things that I do to fuel my writing life. Cool. So this is my daily writing prompts. These are the workshops that I sign up for. I just did a fabulous writing workshop with Amy Bender that Kathy Fish was actually a participant in. So double bonus. And then I met all kinds of wonderful flash fiction writers that I've made contact with. All my close reading that I've done, which I've also done before with my Bradbury challenge, where I read a poem, an essay, and a short story. So I am logging those close readings and then some things that happened there. I've done that with revision. So I'm trying to bring like all the challenges that I do kind of together. I listen to a lot of writing podcasts. So I'm tracking this on a beautiful spreadsheet.
Right.
Just to kind of see all the different things that I do to fuel my writing life, partially because I need to know about my own process. And also because other people ask me about it all the time.
Yes, that's always when people ask and you're like, I've just done all these magnificent things. So I love that idea that you have it. You're going to have it to have that answer. This is actually what I've done. So one of the things that you had noted in the newsletter, and then you've also mentioned a bit earlier here, is tarot. And I know there are so many writers that use the tarot for their writing. What is your exploration? How are you using tarot, and how does that sort of play into all this?
So I started using tarot with writing 2 years ago with NaNoWriMo.
Oh,
and cool. I'd always had a deck, and it's always been fascinating me. The artistry and some of the decks, I mean, the art, it's like having your own little art gallery in a box. I mean, it really is amazing.
Do you have a favorite right now?
I do. The Way Home Tarot right now is my favorite. I told my husband the other day, it is the deck where almost every single picture that goes along with each of the cards is one that I would have chosen. So I feel very connected to that deck.
I think that's like the point with tarot, right? To really find the one that,
right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then you have your, so for those listeners who don't know, tarot is a deck. There's the major arcana, which is 22 cards. And then there is a minor arcana, which is 4 suits, just like a deck of playing cards. So you have wands, swords, cups, and pentacles. And depending on the artwork, I mean, I have crow tarot, right. But the most traditional one, I love my crows. We can get the whole animal thing again, but and the Rider-Waite is the most traditional.
Right.
And what's interesting about using the Rider-Waite for writing is that the pictures are very busy. Like there's lots of icons and things. And so sometimes you can just pull a card and see, like so how I used it originally was I would get stuck and I'd be like, okay, I don't know where the story is going. So I'm like, I'm going to pull a card and see what happens. So I'd pull the card and my eye would go to a picture or some part of the card. And I'm like, oh, well, I could add that to the story. And then it would.
So in terms of just like looking at the landscape or looking at and using that as my story can use that piece right now.
Yep.
Okay.
And just to see what direction, you can use it for character development. You can do different spreads where it's like beginning, middle, and end of a story. Carolyn Donahue talks a lot about that. She's the one that does the Secret Library podcast.
Okay.
And she uses tarot. She's funny though. She says, she goes, they're just pictures on pieces of cardboard. They're
right.
That's all they are.
That's it.
So yeah. And then I actually recently took a class with Hillary Leftwich, which was really wonderful. She had some specific spreads for like plot. And so you pull different cards and it was amazing, like how this whole story sort of emerged. So there's all kinds of different ways that you can use it. But the very basic one is just pull the card and use it as a visual, writing prompt.
So is that your sort of goal for the last 100 days to just keep exploring that or to dive deep and look at different ways of using tarot?
I think I'm always open for different ways of using tarot, but I am kind of honing in on, the difference between just pulling the one card when you're unsure what to write next, and then these specific spreads. Because the one thing I did learn is if you do a specific spread for a story, and then you actually force yourself to write out how those pieces connect to the story, you're almost making an outline for the story as you're doing it. Okay. But because you have to type it out, it's a different type of thinking, like instead of just thinking it in your head.
Yes. Right.
So that I'm exploring a little bit more because I did find that piece was really pivotal in the class that I took a couple months ago.
Cool. I saw tarot on that list and I was like, I need to know more. Because everything else on the list was like clearly MFA, writing related, and then tarot. It's like, okay, here we are with the tarot and writing connection again. I need to know Tammy's take. This is great.
Yeah, Tammy's take on the tarot. Yeah, there we go. Maybe that should be the name of the class. But yeah, so my own, because all of my classes come out of my own personal experience, because I'm never going to ask anyone that I am a teacher of to do anything that I haven't already done or I'm not willing to do. So
yeah, I'm with you on that. So it may be clear to everyone listening, I'm not sure, but you are very involved, not only in your own writing community, but in many writing communities, constantly seeking and finding all different places to continually fill your cup in that way. Has that always been the case for you? Is that how you approached writing from the get-go? Like, how did you first discover or sort of intuit that you needed writing community?
I first realized that I needed writing community when I realized that I could get it over the internet, because I had written forever by myself. And then I started listening to podcasts, and I don't even remember how that even started. It must have been around 2016. And I listened to the DIY MFA podcast and I heard Julie Duffy talk about story a day. And I'm like, wait a minute, there's a group of people that write short stories, and you can talk to them on this blog. Yeah. So that's kind of where it started. And then,
were you blogging at the time or not yet?
I had started, but it was more educational based. It had nothing to do with sharing my writing. I was still in my little closet writing all by myself and not sharing anything. I was also still not finishing anything at the time. That was, I had a ton of beginnings. I was journaling and writing, but
yeah.
So that was a real pivotal moment for me. And I tried in-person writing groups before, but as a short story writer and a poetry writer, a lot of in-person writing groups, if there were any, were all novel writers. Yeah. And they were all double my age, which is not a terrible thing, but I didn't feel like when I spoke that they understood what I was saying. Yes, we were all writers, but it was a completely different language.
Yes.
And Julie's community is called the Superstars, which that became a very close-knit family because we kind of like Happy Campers, it grew from the inception of the idea into where it started to get bigger. And then, there's more people that come in and out. So that was when I first realized that I needed community and how fueling that actually was. I mean, when you were feeling, writing community is amazing. You don't have to explain yourself. They're your tribe. And then when you're feeling bad, because there are those days where we're like, it doesn't matter how much you've published or what accolades you've had. There are certain days where we're like, this is crap. I don't know what I'm doing. What in the world is happening? And you need someone to say, Tammy, it's okay.
Right.
Tomorrow's a new day. Just keep writing. And then, a month from now, when you look back at your notebook, you won't be able to tell it was a bad day based on the writing.
So an interesting thing that's been coming up as I'm talking to all the happy campers is that conversation right there of Tammy, it's okay. There's another day. Could you hear that from someone who wasn't a writer and get that same sort of calm? Is there a friendship circle or a family that could serve that? And did you realize that before that it was, because I see you saying no, did you realize that it was only writers, or was it only in the moment that it happened?
It's only writers. I think that they're writers have their own language and their own process. Even though we all do it very differently, there are still common threads that go through. Everybody has a reason why they write. Most of us are compelled to write something. And many of us have tried to stop writing, and we get pulled, we get sucked back because it's part of who we are.
Yeah.
There are lots of people in my family, and my husband, for one, is very supportive, and he supports all the writing that I do. We change schedules, during NaNoWriMo, it's I have to do my words today. And I mean, him and the kids are all like, okay, she has to do words. But it's a different feeling when you're talking to another writer who has written something that's very personal to them, and you've shared it with someone. And you're vulnerable in a certain way, and that takes a certain level of understanding. I mean, it's also part of that conversation of process too. If I say to a layperson down the street, are you a pantser or a plotter? They would have no idea what I'm talking about. They'd be like, what? Pantsers, of course. I mean, I know all the listeners are writers on your podcast, but pantsers we write by the seat of our pants, and plotters, outline everything. Sometimes I'm a plantser, which is a combination. But.
Me too. I've been noticing.
The writing community, the conversations I have with my writing community are much different than any conversation that I have, because they understand I don't have to overly explain myself.
Right. Oh, that's great. So you've explained that in those moments of feeling up and down, writing community has served you and been there for you to in a level of understanding that no one else can. But what other ways would you say being in community has maybe elevated your writing or just served you in general in terms of your growth as a writer, or in any terms, really?
I mean, when you have people that have your back, I mean, I'm pretty self-sufficient as far as accountability goes. But if you're quiet in a community and people know that when you're feeling down or things are crashing and you withdraw, and you have those people that know, like, to reach out and say, hey, just thinking about you today, that can get you back. When you first started the Happy Campers, because I was in the first round before the pandemic hit, I'd already signed up, and then of course that worked out quite well.
So you are one of the ones that that can be like, somehow I awarded for it ever happening, because I keep telling everyone this story, that I created it at the beginning of 2020. It was just like an experiment. I would try in April, and I had launched it / announced it maybe like end of February, something along those lines. And some people signed up by the beginning of March. And then March 19th was my husband's last day at work. And my son was already home from school. And it looked like this lockdown thing might overlap into the Happy Campers. And I was like, maybe I should just pull the plug. And then I was like, but I can't, because some people have already signed up. So maybe it'll just be the 2 or 3 of us. And, or maybe they won't show up at all when it comes down to it. But if nobody had signed up, or if I hadn't launched it early enough, I don't think I would have done it at all. I would have said, this isn't the right time. And then it would have been a year and a half of absolute misery. But it
was actually the perfect time, because it was
ended up, I didn't know what it was going to be, really. It ended up being the most perfect thing. Yeah.
It was the perfect time for everybody to kind of get together, and everybody we didn't have extra time. Like, you can't make time, but the commitments to our time had loosened up, because nobody could go anywhere.
Right.
And Happy Campers is interesting to me because I have a daily writing practice, but I had never been part of a group that had like themed days. And I had done that in my classroom life, but never thought to combine them. So that worked really well. I
know my secret now. You know where it came from.
Yes, I know. Yes.
Teacher brain.
Yeah. And we had talked about that before, but it sort of was the perfect time. It was the coming together of, the goals, and then the write-ins, which I'd had great success at. And it was amazing to me how much writing you can get done when you're on a Zoom call with other writers. I mean, even just writing different things. And then of course the chat, we always love, but that let me see another realm of possibility. And I had started doing workshops at that time, like little baby workshops, with like personality, but I didn't think that it would be anything regular. I was kind of experimenting with things then too. But your group was so wonderful because it introduced me to people that I would have never met any other way. And you did the one in April, then we took a break. And I want to say the month that you did the Writing Down the Bones book study, I met Jamie, and Jamie and I mean, she is a critique partner. We talk almost every day. Right. We read each other's stuff. She writes really weird, dark things. And it was funny because, she's very small and petite, and she looks like she'd be very sweet. And she writes these like really dark, wonderful things.
And she is very sweet.
She is. Yes, absolutely.
And that's part of the wonderful thing about Jamie is that she feels bad sometimes about her dark things. Why am I writing this? And it's like, it's wonderful and beautiful. And so amazing.
But she also has this amazing music and composer background, which she combines with her writing. And so, just the different possibilities of meeting people like Jamie and Jackie and Susie, just all these different realms of how people approach writing.
Yes.
And to have these fabulous, rich conversations about their writing process, and then to see the writing that they produce is so wonderful. I mean, it makes everything just seem possible as far as the right, but it's very supportive. And even though nobody writes the same type of stories,
right,
everybody is very supportive of one another. And, and that's reassuring. And everybody has their area of expertise. So if you want to know something in particular, I know many writers that I can talk to see where I need to get that answer, even if they don't automatically have it. And that's just invaluable.
Yeah. Yeah. It's turned into like a large network of like, this is
I don't feel alone anymore.
Oh, yes. Mission accomplished. I mean, and this is also, you heard the interview with Joanne, like the idea that Joanne and other Tammy O'Quinn were able to maintain contact outside of Happy Campers. It's the dream. You and Jamie, like whenever Jamie's like, oh, I was talking to Tammy, I'm like, yeah, you were. That's awesome. Like this is the point. I love that we have found each other and then maintain those connections throughout, because we are our people, like you may not be in daily contact with everybody in the group, but somebody in there is probably singing your song. So
and there's another thing too.
Yeah.
The thing that I love about your group and my group is that we share some of the same connections.
Yes.
But there is not one iota of competition between us, because both of us approach this as my group and the things that I do is in a certain lane, and yours is in a certain lane. And sometimes they merge together. Right. But we both have our different styles, and we could say the exact same thing, and we'll have people that want to hear it from me and some people that want to hear it from you. And we promote each other's stuff. It's like, hey, go over here. This is, Nicole's doing this thing. This is perfect. But that's wonderful, because it just makes the community even bigger, and people dip in and out, and it's amazing.
Yeah. I think it's basically a foundational element of community is that competition does not really belong there, unless, like I always say, you're playing a game. Like that's where competition belongs, when we're playing. But everything that we are doing is trying to grow, trying to better ourselves, trying to be a community. We have a lot of fun, but we're not playing. And I'm not, to me, it's like, when my brother was dating like crazy, and he'd be like, girls play games and this, I'm like, I don't know how you deal with this, all these game playing things. To me, that's what it would feel like if I were trying to compete with you. I'd be like playing all those games that, to circle back to your point from earlier, that is not where my energy, I do not want to spend any of my energy on that. And we just continue to compliment each other. We are having a lot of the similar conversations. We're both inspired by many of the same writers that are out there. So, and I think we both realize from our teaching backgrounds, repetition works. Like some people need to hear things over and over again. So hear it from me, hear it from Tammy, hear it from Sam, hear it, like, let's just keep going around and around. And I don't know how many times I need to hear something before it sinks in, So, no, I appreciate that as well. And I'm always here to lift up other writing communities, because I know that my voice doesn't reach everyone. And that's no reflection on me or them. It's just, we all have our own people. So if I mean, even back when I was teaching, I would often think like, I'm Resource Rivera, like that's me. You need a resource, I'll find it for you. I would like to do the same thing with writing community and let people know what's out there. So, and I'm so excited that you constantly have this push group going. And I love it when the happy campers are like, oh, I gotta go. Tammy's group is starting. I'm like, all right, go, get to Tammy's group. Let's go. And there are times it will say, well, oh, over in the other group, somebody said this, and, and then it comes into our group to inspire everybody. We would not have that if there was some sort of like unwritten rule that if you're with me, you can't go to Tammy's group. Right. So it doesn't serve me at all to be competitive in that way. So I thank you for what you do, because it's I see. I've got like you said, we have a lot of overlap. I have many people that are in your push groups, many people that are in Sam's CAP groups. And there are times that we're having conversations where somebody's blocked and, I may plant a seed and then they'll go to your meeting. And then, they may have a conversation with somebody from Sam's meeting or what have you. And then by the next week, it's like, well, you said this, Nicole. And then, it came up again. And then it came up again. And I think I'm starting to see what you were saying. And I'm like, there it is. Okay. I couldn't have done that on my own. I could not have done that on my own. So I love that. So going back to the various themed things that I do, there's basically like 5 different types of things you do in Happy Campers. Was there one that really served you more than the others? Or is it sort of just like a package deal that it all sort of worked?
It is the package deal. I mean, it's always interesting for me to hear other writers thinking. That helps me either A, believe that I'm not as crazy as sometimes I think I am, or B, like, hey, that's a great idea. I'm going to do that too. The writers chat actually really fuels me, the one on Wednesday, which I love, but I'm also a sucker for learning something new. So I really enjoy, like, I know that, tonight is the story structure, which, even though I'm a pantser, I'm obsessed with plot structure. So I have a whole file. I have
the same problem.
Yes, I know. And right now, plot embryo is my favorite, but which we talked about.
Right.
But when you do the book study with like writing down the bones, and for that conversation to have a really focused, hyper-focused topic, that really fuels me because I'm the curator of information. I like to take all these different things and make the connections between them. Right. And so to hear how other people think about it in a different way than I do, I love being in the conversation where you're like, I didn't think about that before. And that typically comes up when you're looking at the same story or the same book or the same, revision pyramid or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, and that's that whole idea of everybody doing or looking or reading the same thing and coming from different directions. That's part of what I love about the writing prompt parties. Like when everybody has the same prompt and then you get perspective, wildly different stories. It always blows my mind. But you're right, it comes through with the craft books as well, that you're all reading the same thing. You've gotten some great inspiration while you were reading, and then you go and share in conversation and somebody else sees something else that you're like, what? Oh man, deeper and deeper and deeper. It is. That's a beautiful one. I love that. And I'm constantly trying to get my craft books back in all the time. It's a tiny obsession of mine, I will say.
It is, I know. I have more writing books, I think, than any other type of books. And I'm a big reader. I mean, I was thinking about that on my Kindle the other day. I'm like, I wonder how many writing books I actually have on here. I'm afraid to count, so I'm not going to. But I do constantly go back to writing down the bones.
Same.
And even writers get obsessed with things. So, I mean, even just to hear people say, I've been thinking a lot about this or this, even like we were talking about earlier with our group bubble sort of, crashing into each other. It's like, oh, I've been thinking about that. And that came up here and that came up here. So there must be something, right? That's a really rich conversation.
For sure.
Yeah.
So we've talked a whole bunch about writing in community. You said you were shocked and surprised about how much writing that you were able to accomplish in a Zoom call in, these short spurts of time. But what is it for you? Does it exist? Is there a level or a part of your writing process that absolutely you must write alone? Like is there a time and place for writing alone for you?
There is. And I recently tried it. This recently happened to me. So I've always been a morning writer.
Yes.
I get up in the morning very early for those.
It's one place where we are wildly different human beings.
Yes. but I battle with insomnia and things too. So that's partially why that is. So it's not like really on purpose sometimes, but
okay.
I have to start my day with writing. Otherwise I get very cranky. So I changed jobs this August and I went back to teacher coaching. And so I was trying to keep my walking schedule, because I try to walk about 10 miles a day. And so I was trying to split my walk when I went back to work, with some in the morning and some in the evening. But that meant that I cut my writing time down in the morning with my coffee. And after about a month of this, I couldn't figure out why I was so cranky.
Wow.
And realized that I must have at least an hour in the morning of writing, because the 15 minutes here and there just was not working. If I don't have that foundational piece, then I struggle. And so I do that alone. I do most of my writing alone. I do prompts and things. I do prompt parties. I do workshops, giving and taking, where I write, and I'm usually happy with that. But the long stretches of time I need to be able to focus is at least an hour. And it's the same for revision, but revision is more effective for me if I do that in the afternoon or the evening. But that generation, I have to be by myself, because I have to be in my own head, so that comes out. And if I realize that I'm in the flow, then it automatically stops. So doing that when I first wake up and kind of still sleepy,
can't realize,
that absolutely helps. And I have a system. I mean, my system now is, I write the date, I write what I've dreamt about if I remember, because I've really been digging into the images there. Like this morning I had 3 prompts. I have my Sarah Selecki daily prompt that I've been writing to since like 2017. I did the last story a day. And then Carolyn Donahue, who I mentioned earlier, the Secret Library podcast, she did a thing called September Sentences. So I wrote her prompt. So, and then I start with whatever, I feel like writing. But yeah, that's all done alone.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. It occurred to me probably like about a year into the podcast. I'm like, I keep shouting to everybody to stop writing alone, but I don't want them to think that it's like, never. Like, I need to be alone sometimes with my own thoughts, and I was just curious if there was anybody that could constantly write in community. And I'm like, I don't think so. But I'm also curious about what is the hinge point for everybody. And it is interesting, because it's not always the same for everyone. So I think it's an important conversation to say, you will need to write alone, but you're going to have to feel out what it is, what part of your process needs that.
Another part where we're different is that I have to finish the thing alone. Like, I don't talk about a story when it's still being written.
Oh, no. Like, me too.
There has to be.
I can't talk about a story until it's done, until I have a first draft.
Yeah. I can't process ideas or anything like that. Like, I know some people like to well, I was thinking about writing this, and let's talk about it.
That is actually my answer about what do I have to write alone. What I have to write alone is at least a 0 draft, at least beginning, middle, end. I have my concept for any. I've made that mistake before. That's how I learned that was my way. That I would, back with the Staten Island Writers Group, I was just trying to show up with stuff. So I was bringing stuff as I was drafting, and it just messed with me. Absolutely messed with me. So, and it's no one's fault at all. It's just that I am going to listen to feedback, and it is going to distract me from whatever my original true north was. So until I can follow that all the way through, I need to have, that's where probably my one quote from Stephen King's On Writing that I still pull out all the time, drafting with the door closed. That's what I do. I do follow that bit of advice from him for sure.
And it's interesting, because the last couple of months I've had a lot of reflection. I feel like I've transformed and leveled up as a writer. Another thing I learned about myself is I used to be, and this of me, like, I'm a very large word count generator. I like to generate. But then I found, feeding into the revision, that, and we've had the conversation about my Jack story. I have a Jack story that I absolutely love. And I know that story is amazing, but I cannot revise it, because I fell into the word count trap. And I have all of these words, and it was very difficult for me to wade through them. It's very overwhelming. So I've been sort of changing some of the things that I'm doing, where I'm not just generating. Right. I'm going back and rereading and doing some light revising so that it's not as overwhelming. And I don't feel like, if I'm not doing as much of the stream of consciousness, like I have to get everything in my head.
Yeah.
I'm being a little bit more particular about that, not censoring myself, but just being more careful about how those sentences come out sometimes, so that I don't have to wade through so many words in order to find the story later.
I think that's one place where challenges like NaNoWriMo stop serving writers. If you're showing up and saying, I have to get this many words every day, and you're just plowing through to get the words. And if you weren't in that challenge and you allowed yourself to sit with the story and say, what words need to be written? Where does this story need to go next? You wouldn't be stuck at the end of November with this behemoth of, I thought I had this story, but there's so much extra and things went off on tangents. So, but it's like a double-edged sword. Like NaNoWriMo is, again, one of those things that I think is beautiful for writers at different levels, in different ways, and as you grow as a writer, you have to learn how to adapt to that challenge. If you want to still show up for it, you still have to show up for it in a way that makes more sense for where you are at as a writer, and not be the I'm blazing everything out of my fingers like I was the first time I did NaNoWriMo, not thinking just to get to the number. So yeah,
but some people need that in order to establish the fact that they can write that much every day.
That's what I'm saying. I think that as a beginning writer, you need to just blindly just dive in. I'm getting 50K, because you will never believe it, but you can do it. You can totally do it.
And some people continue that, because I know that's what happened to me the first time, is that, I'm like, oh, if I can do this, then I can write every day. Yes. And that's fueling for me. And that doesn't work for everyone.
Right.
But, I think that you have to have a consistent schedule of some sort. And some people do that with spurts, like they write really, really long for a month or two, and then they take a break. Like I have to have that continual, like, daily stimulation, but that's just, but I've learned that over the years.
And I've learned that does not work I can't do daily. I am a input output person. So I literally have my cup, I pour it out, and then I need to fill it up, and then I pour it out again. So it's a really interesting process. And like you said, over the years, we learn. And I think that's, if I have any other message besides stop writing alone, it's that, everybody's process is their own, and nothing that you discover about your own process of writing is wrong if it works for you.
But that's what's beautiful about your community too, is that when we have newer writers that have come in and they hear these stories from those of us who have been writing for a really, really long time and have published and done all these other things, and they're like, all of you do this differently. Like, it's okay if I do it differently too. Yes. And that can be really reassuring for newer writers as well, or those who are coming back to the process after a long break.
True. All right. I don't want to take too much more of your time. It's middle of your day. So I have the one question that I've been asking everyone. Tammy Breitweiser, how do you define writing community?
Writing community is my tribe of people, the people that I feel safe with, that have a common interest, and who I do not have to overly explain myself to, because they already have the vocabulary where we all talk the same language. And that is a comfort. That is a real comfort.
I love it. Yeah, that common language is huge. It's great. I cannot thank you enough again. Is there anything else that you want to add to the Stop Writing Alone community here? You want to share with them before you go? We have your @Inspire Tammy with a Y. Tammy B is your Instagram, where we can find everything in your bio. But what else? Anything from Tammy?
Yeah, any new offerings will be in Instagram. Any questions, anything, you can always DM. But yeah, that's where my go-to thing, and everything else is linked. My newsletter comes out on Mondays. You can link there. My blog is there, and you can search for things. And And yeah, just happy writing to everyone, whatever that looks like for each individual.
That's right. That's right. Oh, love it. Thank you, Tammy, again. And
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll talk again soon.
Okay.
Well, I can't thank Tammy enough for coming back to the Stop Writing Alone podcast and sharing all of her wisdom with us. But also on a personal note, I'm so grateful to Tammy for being an early supporter of Stop Writing Alone, the podcast, but also jumping in at the beginning of Happy Campers and helping make me see that there was something there before we even realized how wonderful it could be. There's so much wonderful information that Tammy shared in this episode, and I tried to get as much of it in the show notes as possible. But as you can hear, she's a wonderful, open person. So if you have any questions, please feel free. I mean, of course, you can reach out to me, but if you have something specific for Tammy too, go hit her up on her Instagram. That's at InspireTammyB. But again, the link will be in the show notes for you. And we're going to keep this going. In the next couple of weeks, you're going to hear from even more happy campers, including Jamie, who Tammy spoke about in this episode. So I look forward to sharing that with you. And I hope this is helping you see how wonderful writing community can be. Wherever level you're at, whatever type of writing you do, there are people out there that speak your language. So go ahead, go find them. And if you don't know where to start looking, you can head on over to Tammy's Instagram. And of course, you can find me at all places Stop Writing Alone and find some more people to connect with there. Have a great week. Happy writing. Don't forget that this week, this Friday, is the writing prompt party that goes live on YouTube, but you're all invited. So if you're not subscribed to the email newsletter and you're hearing this live, sign on up so you get your link for tomorrow's writing prompt party. And if you missed this month's, there will be one next month as well. Have a great week. Thanks for listening.